The sky was burning. Not with fire, not with war, but with the cold and merciless light of annihilation. Earth's final hours had come. The Korthan swarm had arrived, an alien horde with no demands, no negotiations, and no mercy. They didn't seek conquest, they sought extinction. For centuries, humanity had imagined first contact with extraterrestrials. Some thought it would be peaceful. Some feared war. No one had expected this, a race that viewed humans as nothing more than vermin to be exterminated. Admiral Elias Voss stood on the bridge of the Ardent Dawn, his gaze locked on the holoscreen. The defense networks were failing. The lunar battle stations, Earth's last line of defense, had already gone dark. The once proud fleets of mankind were shattered debris now, their broken hulls drifting like tombstones in space. Evacuation status? Voss demanded, his voice tight with barely contained fury. Less than 10% of the fleet has launched, his lieutenant responded. Most are still grounded. The orbital lanes are chaos. They had known this day would come. For years, whispers of an approaching doom had spread through the highest levels of human leadership. Some had called it paranoia. Some had wanted to fight. But the Korthan swarm was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Their technology was beyond comprehension. Their numbers were endless. A direct battle was suicide. Humanity had only one option, to run. Voss turned to the comms officer. Send the final order to all remaining ships. Launch now, or be left behind. Across Earth and its colonies, the last of humanity's great ships lifted off in a desperate bid for survival. Some were military vessels, battered but still functional. Others were hastily retrofitted cargo haulers, station transports, and even luxury liners. Anything that could fly, did. The Ardent Dawn was among the last to leave. As its engines roared to life, Voss allowed himself one final glance at his homeworld. Earth, cradle of humanity, was dying, cities burned. Oceans boiled. The very air itself seemed to scream as the Korthan unleashed their wrath. Engage the FTL drive, he ordered. The ship trembled as reality twisted around them. A moment later, Earth was gone. Deep space, 5 days later. The survivors drifted through the void, lost and scattered. Their fleet was broken, disorganized, millions of humans spread across thousands of ships, with no clear leadership and no destination. The dream of a united escape had died in the chaos. Now, they were little more than a drifting people, exiles with no home. On the Ardent Dawn, Voss studied the star charts. There were no friendly ports. No human colonies untouched by the Korthan. No safe haven. Sir, the comms officer called, her voice uncertain. We've received a message. It's from an unknown source. Put it through. A flickering hollow image appeared, an alien, humanoid but unfamiliar, with deep-set eyes and skin like polished stone. You are human? The alien asked. Voss narrowed his eyes. Who wants to know? The alien leaned forward, an expression that might have been sympathy crossing its features. I am Vekthal of the Vishari Confederacy, it said. And I know what has happened to your people. A pause. I also know what you must do next. Voss's jaw tightened. And what is that? The alien's gaze was piercing. You must survive. The transmission cut out, leaving only silence. Voss exhaled slowly. They were alone, lost, and abandoned. But they were not dead. Not yet. And as long as humanity still breathed, they had a future to fight for. The ragtag human fleet drifted in the cold void, scattered, leaderless, desperate. Millions of refugees packed into ships never meant for long-term habitation. Resources were running low. Tempers flared. Humanity was on the brink of self-destruction, not from an alien threat, but from within. Admiral Elias Voss sat in the dimly lit command center of the Ardent Dawn, staring at the star map. He had spent his entire career fighting battles, commanding fleets, but this was something else. they weren't warriors anymore. They were survivors. And survivors needed a home. The Vishari envoy, Vekthal, had given them one possible destination, ***, a planet called Carthos IV***. It was uncharted, isolated, far beyond the Korthans' known reach. But there was a problem. Carthos IV is a death trap, muttered Captain Lin Zhao, leader of one of the remaining Earth battleships. Sensors show extreme weather conditions, toxic atmosphere, and no existing infrastructure. It's barely habitable. Voss sighed. And our other options? Silence. The reality was grim. Every known habitable world was already occupied, either by hostile alien empires or by species that saw humanity as pathetic refugees, unworthy of a second chance. Voss rose from his seat, his voice firm. Then we make it habitable. The alternative is slow starvation in the void. He glanced at his officers. Send a signal to the fleet. We go to Carthos IV. Planetfall, Carthos IV. The sky of Carthos IV churned with green lightning as the first human ships descended. A planet of endless storms, jagged mountains, and frozen wastelands. No paradise. No welcoming land of opportunity. But it was theirs. The first weeks were brutal. Hundreds died to exposure and failed equipment. The storms destroyed dozens of ships before they could even land. The air was breathable, but laced with unknown toxins that sickened many. Food was scarce. Arguments turned to fights. Humanity, it seemed, was tearing itself apart. But then, something changed. They adapted. The engineers salvaged ship parts to construct environmental domes. The scientists studied the planet's ecosystem and developed antidotes to the toxins. The farmers began experimenting with local plant life, modifying crops to survive in the alien soil. The Korthan had taken Earth. They had left humanity adrift in the void, expecting them to wither and die. But humans were too stubborn to die. The first contact. 3 months after landing, the first alien ship appeared in the sky. A sleek, insectoid vessel descended near the settlement, its hull bristling with unknown weapons. Alarms blared as armed human patrols rushed to defensive positions. Weapons ready, Captain Zhao muttered. Voss held up a hand. No. Let's see what they want. The alien ship's ramp extended, and a towering, chitin-covered figure stepped forward. A member of the Torvaki, a minor but aggressive warlike species. You are the humans, the creature rasped. The Exiles. Voss nodded. Who's asking? The Torvaki clicked its mandibles. I am Krailzar. This world, it is unclaimed. We have observed you struggling to tame it. A pause. The weak do not deserve to keep what they cannot hold. Zhao tensed. Is that a threat? Zar tilted his head. It is an opportunity. Voss narrowed his eyes. What kind of opportunity? The Torvaki warrior smiled, a cruel, predatory gesture. Prove that you deserve to survive. The first trial. The challenge was clear. The Torvaki, like many species in the outer fringes of the galaxy, respected only strength. They would not allow humanity to settle unopposed. If humans wanted to claim Carthos IV, they had to fight for it. The Torvaki's challenge was simple, a duel of champions. If the human fighter won, the Torvaki would recognize humanity's claim and leave them unchallenged. If the human lost, the Torvaki would take Carthos IV for themselves. Voss had no choice. He sent out a call. Who will fight for humanity? A single man stepped forward. Darius Kane. Former Earth shock trooper. The last of his unit, ***. This planet is ours, he said. I'll make sure they know it. The duel was set. Humanity's fate would be decided in blood. The arena was a natural formation, a vast, rocky plateau surrounded by jagged cliffs. The storm clouds above rumbled like distant drums of war. On one side stood Darius Kane, clad in salvaged armor, a plasma blade in one hand, a shock gauntlet crackling on the other. The last Earth shock trooper. On the other side loomed Krail Zar, the Torvaki warlord, standing nearly 8 feet tall. His exoskeleton was thick as steel, and he wielded a brutal serrated war axe that vibrated at an inhuman frequency. The rules were simple. One warrior would leave this battlefield alive. The Torvaki gathered in the hundreds, clicking their mandibles in anticipation. The humans stood on the opposite end, watching their future unfold in real time. If Darius lost, Carthos IV would be overrun. The last of humanity's exiles would become slaves or corpses. Admiral Voss stood at the front of the human crowd, arms crossed. He had fought countless battles, but this was something different. This wasn't about strategy or firepower. This was about proving to the galaxy that humanity was not weak. A Torvaki elder raised his clawed hand. Begin. Duel of survival. Zar moved first. The ground shook as the warlord charged, his axe humming through the air like a reaper's scythe. Darius sidestepped at the last moment, feeling the heat of the blade pass just inches from his face. Too fast. Too strong, ***. He couldn't match the Torvaki's brute force. But he didn't need to. Darius danced around the next blow, then the next, each movement calculated. The moment Zar overextended, Darius struck, his shock gauntlet slamming into the alien's ribs. A blast of electricity surged through the warlord's body, sending him stumbling. The Torvaki crowd hissed in surprise. Zar recovered quickly, lunging forward in a fury. This time, Darius had no room to dodge. The warlord's axe came down in a brutal arc, ***. Darius barely blocked it with his plasma blade ***, the force of the impact sending him skidding backward. His arm numbed from the hit. His breath came in short gasps. One mistake, and he was dead. But humans didn't break that easily. Darius rushed forward instead of retreating, using his smaller frame to his advantage. He ducked beneath Zar's next swing, rolled behind him, and drove his plasma blade into the warlord's exposed joint. The blade sank deep, piercing through chitin and into flesh. Zar roared in agony. Darius twisted the blade. The warlord collapsed. Silence. Then the Torvaki warriors slammed their weapons against the ground in acknowledgement. The fight was over. Darius Kane had won. A warrior's respect. Krail Zar knelt, blood oozing from his wound. Despite his loss, he grinned, a fierce, predatory expression. You fight well, human. His mandibles twitched. We respect warriors. And you are worthy. He turned to his people. The humans keep Carthos IV, let none challenge them. The Torvaki roared in approval, their warlike culture honoring the strength displayed. The humans had proven themselves, not as victims, not as refugees, but as a people willing to fight for what was theirs. Voss exhaled a slow breath. This was only the beginning. They had survived the first challenge. But more would come. The invasion. 3 months passed. Carthos IV was transforming. The humans had fortified their settlements, built weapon outposts, and begun crafting an actual civilization. No longer just survivors, they were pioneers. But the galaxy had taken notice. The battle with the Torvaki had been watched by more than just their immediate neighbors. And not all species were content to let humanity carve out its own place in the stars. A message came through one morning. An ultimatum. This is the Vordran hierarchy. You are an unregistered species occupying contested space. Surrender, and we will grant you a place among our servants. Resist, and you will be eradicated. A single ship descended into the atmosphere, unleashing an orbital bombardment on the outskirts of the colony. Entire sections of the settlement were wiped out in an instant. Voss clenched his fists. The Vordran weren't like the Torvaki. They weren't here to challenge humanity. They were here to conquer them. The Exiles had no fleet, no reinforcements, no allies. But they had something more powerful than all of that. They had nothing left to lose. And when humanity had nothing to lose, that's when they became truly dangerous. The first strike came without warning. A Vordran warship, sleek and bristling with weapons, had descended from orbit and reduced an entire human settlement to ash within minutes. Hundreds of men, women, and children were vaporized before they even knew they were under attack. Admiral Elias Voss watched the destruction from his command post, his face carved from stone. The message from the Vordran hierarchy had been clear: submit or die. Voss's reply was just as clear: we are not slaves. The gathering storm. The first battle was a massacre. The Exiles had no fleet, no planetary defense grid, and only a handful of salvaged weapons. The Vordran's forces were overwhelming, trained shock troops armed with plasma rifles, cybernetic enhancements, and air support. But humans did not surrender. Instead of engaging in direct battle, the Exiles vanished into the storm-ridden mountains of Carthos IV. What little they had left was mobilized, hunting rifles, mining explosives, even sharpened metal pipes. They fought like cornered animals, striking from the shadows, ambushing patrols, stealing enemy weapons. The Vordran expected submission. They got resistance, ***. Within 2 weeks, Vordran officers were being assassinated in their own bases. Fuel depots exploded. Supply chains collapsed. Their occupation forces were being hunted. The Vordran had invaded, thinking they were dealing with a broken, desperate people. Instead, they had awakened an army. A legion is born. Darius Kane, the warrior who had defeated the Torvaki warlord, was the first to name them, the Human Legion. No uniforms. No official ranks. Just survivors turned into soldiers, their rage turned into weapons. They had studied their enemies, dissected their tactics, stolen their technology. Within months, what had begun as a desperate resistance became a full-fledged war machine. The Torvaki warriors, once neutral, chose to fight alongside them, drawn by the sheer ferocity of the human cause. Mercenaries and defectors from other alien species, oppressed by the Vordran, ***, joined the ranks ***, following humanity's example. For the first time since leaving Earth, humanity had an army again. Turning the tide. The Vordran, enraged by the growing insurgency, deployed their elite enforcers, biomechanical super-soldiers known as the Primacy Guard. 7 feet tall. Enhanced strength. Advanced combat programming. A single squad could raise a city. Voss and his officers set the trap. They let the Vordran think they had cornered the last human stronghold in the Canyonlands. As the Primacy Guard stormed the ruins, the trap was sprung. Explosive charges collapsed the canyon walls, sealing the enemy inside. Then, from the ridges above, the Human Legion unleashed everything: railgun sniper fire, homemade plasma mortars, and hacked enemy drones turned against their former masters. For the first time in history, the Primacy Guard fell. The Vordran withdrew in horror, retreating from Carthos IV. The Human Legion had won. The message to the galaxy. When the last Vordran warship fled the system, Admiral Voss had a single message broadcast across the stars. Humanity does not kneel. The message spread farther than anyone expected. Across the galaxy, oppressed species listened. The Vordran hierarchy had seemed unstoppable, until now. And suddenly, the rumors began. The exiles of Earth. The warriors who would not die. The Human Legion ***. For the first time since their exile, humanity wasn't just surviving. They were building something greater. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. Humanity's defiance shook the galaxy. The Vordran hierarchy, once thought unstoppable, had been forced to retreat from Carthos IV. The impossible had happened: an unarmed, exiled species had defeated one of the most advanced militaries in known space. The message spread across the stars like wildfire. Humanity does not kneel. To the Vordran's countless oppressed worlds, the phrase became a symbol of defiance. To their puppet species, it became a whisper of fear. And to those who had long waited for the moment to strike, it became a call to arms. A rebellion had begun. And at its heart stood the human legion. Allies in the shadows. Carthos 4 became more than a battlefield. It became a beacon. Fleets of refugees, defectors, and warriors from across the stars risked everything to reach the human stronghold. Among them were the Zelrani nomads, a species of cybernetic survivalists, who had spent centuries evading the Vordran. The Dravak brood clans, insectoid warriors who had been crushed by the hierarchy's expansion. The Torvaki, once humanity's rivals, now their first true allies. What had started as a handful of exiles was now an armada. Admiral Voss stood before this ragtag force and spoke the words that would define history. We are no longer refugees. We are no longer exiles. We are an empire in the making. The war for survival had ended. The war for dominion had begun. Striking the chains. The rebellion's first target was Mornak 3, a Vordran-controlled world known for its brutal slave camps. The Vordran believed the planet was untouchable, protected by orbital defense platforms and garrisons of elite troops. They were wrong. Darius Kane led the first planetary assault in human history. The Legion's guerrilla tactics, combined with stolen Vordran technology, ripped through the enemy's defenses. They disabled the planetary shield generators, hijacked supply routes, and turned Vordran war machines against their own masters. By the time the bulk of the enemy forces realized what was happening, the slaves had already risen in open revolt. The battle lasted only 3 days. Mornak 3 was liberated. The human legion had done what no other force had dared. They had toppled a Vordran stronghold. And the galaxy was watching. The fracturing of the Vordran. The hierarchy was staggering. They had expected to crush humanity easily, but now their empire was cracking from within. The loss of Mornak 3 ignited rebellion on a dozen other worlds. Vordran generals turned on each other, blaming failures on internal corruption. One by one, their vassal species defected, unwilling to risk extinction for an empire that was no longer invincible. Then came the ultimate betrayal. Lord Varric, one of the hierarchy's most powerful warlords, offered to defect. Voss, ever the strategist, listened carefully to his proposal. Varric offered his fleet, his weapons, and his knowledge of Vordran weaknesses, but in exchange, he wanted a seat at the table. A former enemy, now offering to serve the Legion. Voss gave his answer. You may serve. But you will never rule us. Varric accepted. The first Vordran warships flew under the human legion's banner. And for the first time, the Vordran feared extinction. A reckoning on the horizon. The legion's momentum was unstoppable. One by one, Vordran strongholds fell to the rebellion. What had once been a species fighting for mere survival had become something terrifying. A human-led coalition that was rewriting the balance of power in the galaxy. The Vordran were losing. But a wounded predator is at its most dangerous when cornered. Deep within their empire, the Vordran prepared a last, desperate gambit. A superweapon, built in secret, with the power to reduce entire planets to dust. Their target? Carthos 4. If they could not rule humanity, they would erase them. The sky burned. Carthos 4, the heart of the human legion, was under siege. The Vordran's ultimate weapon, a planet-cracker dreadnought known as the Harbinger, hovered in high orbit. Its primary weapon, a graviton annihilator, was charging. One shot, and Carthos 4 would be reduced to a smoldering wasteland. Humanity's first empire would die before it could even rise. But humans had never feared the impossible. Admiral Voss stood in the underground war room, staring at the battle map. Thousands of enemy warships encircled the planet. The fleet they had built, scrapped together from salvaged wreckage, stolen ships, and defector forces, was outnumbered 10 to 1. Yet surrender was not an option. Darius Kane tightened his gauntlet and spoke what they were all thinking. Then we take the impossible and make it ours. The last stand of Carthos 4 had begun. The battle for the skies. The human legion's fleet surged forward like a spear through the darkness. The Torvaki dreadnoughts, reinforced with human-engineered railguns, tore through enemy formations. The Zelrani nomads launched devastating EMP strikes, disrupting Vordran command networks. Varric's defected warships turned on their former masters, causing chaos in their ranks. But it wasn't enough. The Harbinger continued its countdown. 5 minutes until the Graviton Annihilator fired. Then came the plan that no Vordran could have anticipated. Darius Kane, leading a covert assault team, launched a boarding operation straight into the heart of the Harbinger. Their objective? Shut the weapon down from the inside. The battle was now being fought on two fronts, one in the cold void of space, the other in the blood-stained corridors of the enemy's deadliest warship. Inside the beast, Darius and his squad breached the dreadnought's hull, cutting through corridors filled with Vordran defenders. Every step forward was a war. Plasma fire rained down from above. Turrets cut through the ranks of both sides. Airlocks depressurized, sucking bodies into the abyss. Darius lost men with every passing second. But they pushed forward, carving a path toward the core of the ship. 3 minutes left. They reached the reactor chamber, only to find it heavily guarded by Vordran primacy guards. The same biomechanical monsters they had barely defeated on Carthos 4. This time, there was no retreat. Darius ignited his plasma blade. The duel for humanity. Krail Zar, the Torvaki warlord and now humanity's fiercest ally, stepped forward beside Darius. "You take the weapon," Zar growled. "I take the beasts." With a roar, the massive warrior charged, colliding with the primacy guard in a battle of sheer strength. Darius didn't look back. He sprinted toward the control center, dodging enemy fire, hacking into the core controls. 1 minute left. The override code was locked. The weapon could not be shut down. There was only one option left. Destroy the Harbinger from within. Darius turned to his squad. "Plant every charge you have on the core. We're blowing this thing to hell. Sacrifice and fire." 30 seconds. The Legion's fleet was breaking apart, struggling against overwhelming numbers. Voss, still commanding from Carthos 4, watched as the sky was consumed with fire. He knew. If the Harbinger fired, there would be no survivors. Then, through the comms, Darius Kane's voice came through. "Mission complete. Detonating now." A blinding explosion erupted from the Harbinger, consuming it from the inside. The dreadnought shattered in a fireball that could be seen from the planet below. The shockwave ripped through the Vordran fleet, throwing their ships into chaos. The Legion saw their chance, and struck with everything they had left. The battle turned. The Vordran fleet, leaderless and burning, began to fall apart. For the first time in history, the hierarchy suffered total defeat. The cost of victory. The war was over. But victory had come at a price. Darius Kane was missing, lost in the explosion. No body was recovered. Thousands had died. Entire fleets were reduced to wreckage. Carthos 4 was damaged but standing. As the fires burned and the dead were mourned, Admiral Voss stood before the survivors. "The hierarchy is broken," he said. "But we are still here." He looked at the stars, at the ruins of the Vordran Empire. "Today, we stop running. Today, humanity rises." The era of exile had ended. The age of the human empire had begun. The war was over. For the first time in centuries, humanity was not fighting to survive. They had won. The Vordran hierarchy, the great galactic power that had once exiled them, was in ruins. Its fleets were shattered, its rulers hunted, and its worlds liberated. The exiles of Earth were no longer refugees. They were conquerors. And now, standing among the ashes of the old order, they faced a new question. What comes next? A throne among the stars. The banners of the human legion flew across a dozen liberated worlds. Carthos 4, once a distant exile colony, was now the beating heart of something greater. The human empire. Admiral Elias Voss was declared the first Lord Chancellor, overseeing the formation of a new galactic government. Under his command, the scattered remnants of the rebellion forged a new order. The Zelrani nomads became the architects of human technology, pushing the limits of cybernetics and AI. The Torvaki warriors, once humanity's rivals, swore allegiance as the Empire's elite soldiers. Former Vordran worlds, freed from tyranny, pledged loyalty, not out of fear, but because they had witnessed humanity's strength. But ruling an empire was far different from fighting for one. The galaxy had taken notice. And not everyone welcomed humanity's rise. Enemies in the shadows. As the empire expanded, whispers spread through the stars. The old galactic powers, once content to watch humanity and the Vordran destroy each other, now saw a new threat emerging. Some feared them. Others envied them. And some, like the mysterious Council of Elders, an ancient coalition of the oldest spacefaring species, prepared to stop them, One message was delivered to Voss in the dead of night, encoded and unsigned. Power is tolerated only when it is controlled. You are neither. The meaning was clear. The war for survival was over. The war for dominance had just begun. The return of a legend. But then came the message that shook the Empire to its core. A distress beacon, weak but unmistakable, broadcasted from deep space. One name was attached to it. Darius Kane. The hero of Carthos IV. The man who had destroyed the Harbinger. The legend who had been presumed dead. Voss ordered the fleet to investigate immediately. What they found changed everything. Beyond the edge of known space. Darius Kane was alive. Barely. His escape pod had drifted beyond known space, pulled into a region the Vordran had long feared. A place called the Black Expanse, a void where ancient ruins floated, abandoned for millions of years. Kane's ship was found docked to one of these ruins. He was injured, but what he had discovered was more important than his survival. He had seen something. Something older than the Vordran. Something watching from the darkness. And before the Legion's fleet could pull him back, a single warning came from the ruins' automated systems, written in a language long forgotten. You were never alone. Something else was out there. Something far worse than the Vordran. And it had just noticed humanity. A new dawn, a new war. As the human empire solidified its rule, they faced two futures. One was of conquest. They could expand, take what they wanted, and carve their place in history as the rulers of the stars. The other was of war. A war not just with the old galactic powers, but with whatever lay beyond the Black Expanse. Darius Kane, now scarred but unbroken, stood before Voss and the Empire's leaders. His voice was calm, but the fire in his eyes burned bright. We fought for survival. We won. But this was only the beginning. The real war hasn't even started yet. He turned to the stars, at the darkness beyond. And we are going to win that one too. Humanity's exile had ended. The era of their dominion had begun. The empire of Earth had risen. And the galaxy would never be the same.